Like if they're in Alaska mining for gold,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
they have like hundreds of thousands of dirt and they put it in the front and then it goes through this whole entire cycle, shaking out the rocks and the water going on top. And at
Sure.
the very end are these tiny, tiny specks, right? So, dude, you got to have a lot of dirt to get the gold out at the end.
Sometimes they fill that machine up and ain't no gold in it, or they get to the spot that's frozen solid they can't get to. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff in every business. What up, y'all? John Wetmore. Welcome back to another episode of the Insurance Insiders Podcast. Got my dude Eric Schmidt with us today. Known you a long time. I don't know quite how long, but it feels like a long time. It's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yep.
Dude sells a lot of insurance, built a big ass agency, still hustling harder than most. If you don't know him, you should follow him. It's a fun journey. I know you've sold a shitload of insurance since I've known you. That's for sure. A lot more than I've sold. I promise you that.
I don't know about that, but yeah, no, I mean, you gotta, you got your biggest spread is on yourself, right? So you got to sell.
Yeah. Didn't you hit Hall of Fame again last year? Did I make that up?
Yes, I did.
That's what I
I
thought,
did.
dude.
I remember I was doing a call with Sizer, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know if we can curse on here or not," but he goes, "Are you going to f around and hit Hall of Fame by mistake this year?" And I said, "Well, that's definitely the goal, because when I was up on stage, um, doing 200K from 23, I gave my Sean a little bro hug, and I'm like, dude, this is not going to happen again." I don't know
I
what's going
remember
to
you
happen in
saying that.
25, but I said, I am definitely going to hit Hall of Fame, as an agency owner and as a
Oh,
producer. So,
both.
yeah, both.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's smart. That's
yeah.
cool.
So that
So
was uh, that
for
was the
those that
driving
don't know,
force.
400 grand in insurance paid premium, and then what's it,
Mhm.
10?
10 million.
10,
Yeah.
10 million in team volume for the year.
Mhm. Yeah.
Has anyone who's done it
Oh,
both in the
there's,
same
there's,
year?
there's, I mean, it's a smaller, it's
Yeah.
bigger than a handful, but there was a group. There wasn't many that did it last year.
Oh.
Not many in
I've
our
done
circle.
both, but not in the same year.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, who cares? It's pretty
Yeah.
badass to do both in the same year.
Yeah, no, it was anything like whatever it's a fitness goal or a family goal
Yeah.
or a business goal. It was definitely a goal. So it was a
I get
driving
it.
force throughout the year, sure.
What's your high in a year? What's the most you've sold
Me
on your own pen?
personally,
Yeah.
low 600s,
Sick.
face to face, 75,000 miles in my car, you know, a lot of cat litter, a lot of cat urine, a
Young
lot
kids don't
of
get that one, bro.
people have, I mean, with all due respect, they just don't know, when you walk up to the door and it smells like, oh boy, this is going to be tough, you know, and,
Some days in
doing the
my
road
head.
war, doing the road warrior app and mapping out your door knocks in anticipation of no shows because you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you go up to the door with the right attitude. And now, obviously, 95% of us are doing telesales. So, transitioning that attitude over like, hey, you got 50 appointments this week, get ready because you're gonna need to work it. So
Yeah. So is that like the new minimum kind of
I
standard if you
think
want
I
to
think you
kill it?
have to. I think you
Yeah.
have to. If you don't have, I mean, when you got your calendar or your Google thing or all these toys and things that are out there, I mean, if you don't have 50 on there, it's just like, man, it's gonna be tough. You're gonna have dialers dialing, you're gonna be dialing, again, depending on what your must-haves are, right? If you need an issue paid and a deposit on a certain week to be a certain amount, it's not gonna happen. There's just too many ways for people to hide behind their phone, and block you and send you there and doing a lot of FaceTime audio calls now. I don't know if
Are you
you guys
really?
are. Yeah, so if I
Oh.
get that blue that shows up, and I get two sent to voicemails, then I'm calling FaceTime audio.
Do you really?
Yeah, because they
Heck
can't
yeah.
send you to a voicemail on that. And they
Shut up.
know
Oh,
I
it
don't.
just
I mean,
rings. Yeah, it
yeah,
just
I don't
goes.
think they can. I mean, they can still delete it, but
Yeah.
um, so like I'll call nothing, text, say, I'll just give my name and number. If it shows blue, then I'll hit FaceTime audio and I'll click share my information. And then sometimes I get picked on. Now, sometimes they're like, what? And they're freaking. I'm just like, hey, just relax. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just trying to get you off my, if it's open, if open, if it's closed, it closed. And your email this morning about the Easter eggs was fantastic. So I mean, and that's my attitude. And I remember, someone that we worked with a long time ago, just like, hey, if you're interested, you're interested. If you're not, you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I'm more interested on the next person than I am on the current person. So
It's true. It's true. What man, so what do you think? Obviously, selling that much insurance. What year did you start selling, first of all?
18, I got my license again. I first got it in '08,
Yeah,
when
I
Sean
remember
was
back in the
with
day.
yeah, and then I got it again at the very end of 18 and did, my sales, my automotive sales deal. I was the general manager of a Chevy
Yeah,
dealership, the biggest one here in Connecticut, which is not a big deal because we're the third smallest state in the country. But
got it.
well, I was running that for 70 hours a week, and then I was doing this, for whatever was left after sleep, 40 hours a week. And then I started full time in this only April of 2019.
As he says, I was doing 70 hours in that and 40 in this
Yeah.
part time.
Yeah, yeah. And then because I knew John, because I was making like 275 W-2 in the car deal.
Yeah,
But I was blowing so much time and there was so much pressure on Carrie and the kids and everything. And I knew that if I could replace my deposits doing this for, 40 hours, when I got those 70 back, that not only would I be able to crush my net, but the recruiting would, because I couldn't really recruit when I was still doing the
yeah,
car deal. Because even though it was really only Facebook at the time, it was still kind of a secret hush hush that I was doing this. I was doing it at
got
lunch
it,
breaks, and I was kind of like
got it.
ducking out on. I would go and praise some guy's Silverado, and I would pull into a lot, and I would make a couple dials, and I would come back after the
No
appraisal,
way.
and oh, I mean, dude,
God.
and I would always have I would have my leads with me all the time,
So
and
what was your
because
schedule then, dude? It had to be pure chaos.
oh yeah, no doubt. So I mean, I told Carrie it's gonna be nice. I said I need 90 days to figure this out, right? And I said after 90 days, if I don't have it figured out, then I'll have to figure something else out. But give me 90 days on this. So Monday I would get to the dealership, or I had to be like on the desk ready to work deals. I think it was either 8:30 or 9. So I got there at 7:30. And I dialed in an abandoned parking lot as soon as 8 o'clock hit, like 7:45. I started to dial because I didn't want to ever leave the dealership without an appointment between my house and the dealership. So I always wanted to go home to at least one or two appointments and the opportunity to do a couple
Got
door
it.
knocks if it was a no show.
And you
So I
left
would
for the
get
day, you mean? So after work.
after
You're
work,
saying
yeah.
after
So if
work.
I
Yep.
left
Got
the
it.
dealership at
Yep.
5, 6, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever, I never wanted to leave the dealership to
And
go
go
straight
straight
home
home.
because no
Got
one
it.
there is buying insurance, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and again, we were
Solid
doing
point. Yeah.
everything face to face. So,
Yep.
so I always wanted to hit at least one or two on the way home.
Yep.
So I would dial lunch, dial on appraisals. I would be, dialing all the time. So Thursday was my day off. I worked bell to Dell Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and every other Sunday
Got
at
it.
the dealership. So my short nights, like if I left at 5 or 6, then I wanted either 4 or 6 appointments that night. And then I always had that Road Warrior app, so I could get around to some quick door knocks if someone no showed me. I always had like my appointment sheet,
Yeah.
and then I had 5 leads behind it, all stapled together. So I was mindset wise, I was always ready to go to that next one.
Near the
But
appointment, I assume you had it prepped near the appointment.
yeah, well, yeah. So that zip code, all the unresolved leads I had in that zip code, I would Road Warrior map that out and I would
Yeah.
have it set. So if the person, if I knocked and the lights were off and I couldn't do it, then I clicked the Road Warrior and it would get me on the road to the door
The
knocks.
next one.
But yeah, so Thursday, I'd run appointments all day.
Mm.
Um, Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island, I try to be smart about it because I was running all 3 states. Again, three very small
Sure.
states. I wouldn't go too far east, Mass, where you grew up. I would stay,
Oh, really? Got it. Okay.
I would say Worcester,
Got it. Near
whatever
Rhode
that big
Island
county.
side.
Yeah, I would go there and west, right?
Got it.
Berkshire, Hampton, Hamden, those counties there. Um, and then yeah, Saturday afterwards, and then Sunday if I wasn't working, I would run appointments all day Sunday.
Sick.
Because I wanted to prove to myself because there's no gold bars in my basement, no trust fund,
Yeah.
carries full time with the children. So I had to replace it. Plus, I had a demo, so I was gonna have to buy a car. and I didn't have health insurance, so I was going to have to get
Ah,
that, so it was a whole, and I was running an electric car at that time. Eric always made fun of me. He's like, dude, how are you doing this in an electric car? I said, well, I had to find a charging station so I could
crazy. I didn't
charge
know
in
that.
between.
That's funny.
But we figured it out, man.
How'd those 90 days go? What was that like?
It was good. I mean, it was wild. I learned a lot. I mean, we were still doing paper apps with trans. And
Yeah.
so I had like a mobile printer, and then I was stopping to places to fax stuff out. Not a lot, but it was chaos. It was definitely chaos. It was, our number one carrier. I was doing most everything with them because I didn't have time to learn, all these other extra carriers. Asking a golden question, I was asking about, other things that
Yeah.
act like life insurance, and that definitely helped me out. That got me, my biggest one sale at that time, um, in one home with an annuity and with a life policy, a mortgage protection policy. Learning a lot from, selling mortgage protection to seniors.
Yeah.
I still send you that video out to people. You look a little different, with all due respect,
Slightly, bro.
but
I
but I
see it and
sent,
I'm like, whoa.
and actually I send Frank's video out, when he's in that
Yeah.
fireplace library thing, and he looks a little bit different. We all look a little bit different.
Jay,
Um,
buddy.
but yeah, that 90 days, it was, but I mean, but I got the buy-in from Carrie, right? And
Did you?
yeah, but I didn't do any traveling, right? I said, I'm probably gonna sleep here every night, but that's all you're gonna see me. Like, I'm gonna get back when everyone's already in bed, and I'm gonna leave before everyone wakes up. So I'll be here, but this is a way for me to, change our lives, not
Yeah.
only, as a couple and as a family emotionally, right? Because there was a lot of pressure on us, John, as far as,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, every holiday you work in a car business, right?
Yeah.
Every Saturday you work in a car business. It doesn't matter if it's a birthday, every snow day you work, even though you're not going to sell cars here in Connecticut, and we don't get a ton of snow anymore, but you go, right? And so you ever drive by a car dealership, whoever's watching this, you guys live in a snow area and you see snow on all those windshields, that ain't coming off by itself. I mean, that's getting scraped off. The cars are getting
Yeah.
moved. You're plowing in front. You're moving the cars back. And then the dealership owner will get you a couple pizzas at the end of the day and say, hey, thanks. Here's some Domino's, or at Little Caesars, we used to
Dang.
work. But that was it. God forbid you had a good month, because then they would try to go and repencil your deals and, mess with your commissions. That didn't happen at most of the places I worked at. But
What does that
um,
mean?
so, like, say, like, you're supposed, like, whatever the net of the dealership is, you get a percentage of it. But, say you crush it because you get all this back end money from the factory. So, like, if you're selling Chevys and you sell, your goal from factory Chevys to sell 100 Chevys that month, and you
Yeah.
sell 100, then they pay you retro maybe $200 a car. So now you get whatever the math
Really?
is on that. Yeah. Um, and then you get, that's your bonus. So a lot of times, you hit that in a deal, people are greedy, right? And they're like, well, yeah, I know you hit this, but we're gonna do, and then they start effing with your pay.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude.
Got it.
Um,
Damn.
and but there's also a lot of stress and pressure in that, not to get too much into the car business, but I'm sure, other businesses
Yeah.
do the same. But like, if they give you a target and then you're selling based on that target, right? So like, I'll sell you a Chevy, but I'll sell it for $500 under cost, because if I know if I hit the big number, I'm going to get all this retro
Got
back
it.
to the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, I don't know what the right words on it,
Yeah.
but if you're betting that way,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
yourself, and that way there towards the end of the month, you can't take a day off. You can't leave early, because what if that person
Got
that
it.
just drove in, wants to get something? Because you've already, because if you don't make that 100th deal, you're going to end up losing, 100 grand for the month,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? So it's,
Got
and
it.
I'm sure it's in similar industries, but
That makes sense.
yeah, but it's, but
So
that
there ain't
90
a
days
lot
was
to be made
wild.
on
So
individual car sale.
what's that?
One car being sold, there ain't a ton of money in it for the salesman.
No, no. Now on the back end, like, when you talk to that guy
Yeah.
in the office,
Sure.
he sells the warranty, the gap insurance, the tire and
Yeah.
wheel,
Yeah.
the key protection, the paint sealant. Those guys make decent money per car, usually a couple grand per car.
Got
They
it.
hate cash deals. They get a cash deal and they throw it out the door. They're like, yeah, get out of here with your cash deal. They want the finance deals,
Because they got it. All the
because,
upsell stuff.
because what's another $20 a month,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
20 times 84 plus interest, you
Yeah.
start adding it up, right?
Yeah.
But
They
but
get me
yeah,
on those
so
things.
but I mean, in between that 90 days, I also had convention too. So because I got my license at the end of December. So, so I did a tiny little bit, figuring it out in January, and then went to convention January 31st in Vegas that year
Got it.
to meet people like you and to see if it was real, right? I'm like, I see all these guys and I've known Sean a long time. I met Sean in 97,
Yeah.
but I said, let me make sure it's real for me. Look at Dom and Frank and all these other people. And that was a small room with a lot of people in it that year. That was the Vegas first year.
Got it.
That
Yeah.
was crazy. And, but I bought some leads. And I took a direct flight back to Boston because I thought that was smarter, but that was a pain in the butt getting back here from Boston. And I turned my leads on. I was using a lead provider that you could pause it like on the app, turn it on and turn it off. So I landed at Logan, turned it back on, got a lead for a guy. His name is Ron and Janet, and that was one of the bigger ones that I got. I'm like, oh, this is it.
Crazy.
Got on the phone with Sean R, and he walked me through an annuity and. Yeah, man. So made it real for sure.
That's sick. So you quit the car thing within that 90 days.
Well, my birthday's at the end of our birthdays are on the same day. So I gave I gave myself to my birthday to get it figured out March 28th. And March 15th, I gave my notice. I'm like, all right, I got this figured out. So I gave 2 weeks notice and they said, hey, can you give us 3? I said, no. And that was it. And towards the end, it was just like, my fingers are bleeding every time I was like doing like the car proposal. I was working the lease numbers out. I'm like, oh, this is just fucking brutal. Keep doing this. But that day came and I was out. But there was a little confusion with Carrie. She's like, I thought you were working from home. I said, no. I said, I'm no longer working at the dealership. I said, this isn't a work from home thing, but this isn't me going to the dealership anymore. So on the calendar, everything went on the calendar first: birthdays, parent teacher conferences, choirs, dance recitals, Evans football and lacrosse and basketball, and then worked around it, and we followed a lot of Zach's mentorship on that, and get that 90-day calendar, and work comes first, but don't miss anything. So put the big stuff on there. So.
You're an insurance agent and you feel like you're stuck. You've hit a wall. You're trying to figure out sales strategies, the scripts to use, how to get like off the ground and get to that top of the leaderboard type status. I have a course that I've put out, super affordable. I'm getting a ton of great feedback from people every day on the strategies they've learned and been able to implement, from goal setting to sales techniques to calendar scheduling, everything you would need to get your business off the ground and get running quickly. jwcourse.com. Click the link below and get in there today. What kind of appointment flow were you running full time to hit those numbers?
Man, so in person, I mean, every day. So that was when we were dialing Monday and Thursday and running those other 2 days, right? So you would dial all day Monday, and you really, wanted, 10 to 12 every day you were going out, and with some intentional door knocks, and then, Sunday, you worked, obviously we dialed Thursday for Friday, Saturday. If you didn't hit Friday, Saturday, then you had to, finish on Sunday, because it was, you wanted that 10K minimally deposited. We had the 10K or die t-shirts, but that was for me, that was deposits.
10K a week.
Yeah.
10K a week.
10K
For
a week,
those that are confused.
Like 10K a week. And that was deposits, not like, oh, I wrote an application and I got a, that was deposits. Yeah.
Yeah. How do, dude, where do they all go wrong, bro? You know
Probably,
what I mean? Like, some people are struggling at 10K a month, as you know. It's like, I want to bang my head against the wall.
Yeah. Well, dude, I listen to so much of your training, John. You've always been a part of my development in this thing. And I'm not saying to blow you up. It's just, you do real shit, and it's getting realer as the days go on. Right. So, everyone's always shocked when they, a lot of people are doing these lead campaigns where you invest a specific amount of dollars per day, right? So you have a system, a CRM, you have a system that you pay monthly for, but then you do your marketing on a per day. Some do, you buy packs of leads, 50 a week, 100 a week, or some people do per day. And they're always they're always crazy when they go from $150 a day to $250 a day. And when they go
Yeah.
from 250 to 350, because that 300, depending on the service, of course, that 3 to 350 is like the sweet spot. And they're just like, oh my God, like it's just mind blowing. But I remember dialing a lead, and it was a Facebook, lead, and it was $25, and a person told me to pound sand before I can even get my intro out. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
man, that's like pizza on Friday night for my family. And I got emotional about it. And so you have to keep those. You can't get too emotionally high, you can't get too emotionally low, but it is hard to do, especially with most people. I mean, you kind of have to find, I mean, you can get a little high and low, but you can't be going on these big swings, because
Yeah.
it'll definitely F with you for sure. Um, and I think, people have a big day and they don't realize it's an advanced 0% loan from the carrier. It's not their money. It's in their account, but it's not their money. And that messes with people, right? And kind of like when I was talking about before, like I didn't go home without an appointment. And I remember there's a guy that we no longer work with, and we were big time competitors here in Connecticut, the Northeast, and
Yeah.
he would buy mortgage protection, and I would buy another mortgage protection. And I'm like, dude, I'm just going to run right behind you, and like he was going home, he was working in Southeast Connecticut, and I was working, but I worked the whole state, but I live in Northeast Connecticut. And I drove by. I didn't even have any more appointments. I drive by my exit. I'm like, I'm going, because he just posted in our whatever group it was at the time, Discord or whatever it was at the group at the time. And I'm like, well, he just posted one, so I'm not going home with him having the last sale on the board. I'm crazy competitive, bro. Yeah. So I'm just not gonna let him have the last post, right? And I had never wanted to be, and I know this doesn't exactly answer your question, John, but I always wanted to be in a position of yes. So if it was like going to a training, going to this, buying this, getting staff, getting an office, I never wanted to be like, well, what's the cost? I just wanted to be like, here comes a question. I already want to say yes. Like, and then it got to a point where people didn't even ask me anymore because they knew I was an automatic yes. And I knew not every yes was going to ROI, but I knew that I wasn't smart enough to say no to the right one. So I wanted to say yes to everything, and it takes money to say yes to everything.
That's a good
like
one.
Someone asks you for a $20,000 check, it's just like boom, done. I remember calling Mike a long time ago. I'm like, dude, like I got an extra X on my account, and I know it shouldn't be there. I wanted to put it to work. And and he would give me advice on what to do with it and so on and so forth. But I think you got to get really far ahead of your cash flow. And a lot of people that come into this, John, they're not making 275 grand a year W-2 like I was. I mean, I already had a big ass mortgage and car payments and activities and lacrosse and football helmets and dance and schools and camps and sneakers. I mean, you can't go, I'd go to Dick's. I mean, you got to get like a credit app, when you go to the counter at Dick's to buy stuff. And you're a baseball family, so I know it's brutal. It's the bat's fault. I need a new bat. Dude, it ain't the bat's 100%. Fault. You're not swinging hard enough. But I think you got to get really far ahead on your cash flow. So it just doesn't matter. And, the people that you work with, I mean, a lot of people I saw, I mean, I go into the bottom of my backpack and I get crumpled paper and I go, dude, here are the leads. Well, what is that? I go, well, they're brand new to you, dude. Start dialing them. Like, ask, I don't think people ask enough questions. Ask for help. I got to ask for a lot of help, because I mean, it doesn't matter if it's sports or business. Like, I mean, no one goes into this thing perfect, right? I played football 30 years ago, and when I played center at college at UConn, like I didn't know how to, I never played center before. Like, this is what you're doing. I'm like, okay, but I don't know how to snap and step forward. I don't know how to snap backwards between my legs and step forward with the right foot. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, yeah, well, you're going to have to practice, and it was thousands and thousands and thousands of rep of keeping your back and keeping your helmet and shooting your arms, and your right arm's going between your legs and your left arm shoot. I mean, dude, like, and your right leg's going and you're making all the line calls. Like, dude, that takes practice. And
it's a lot happening.
Yeah. And there's a lot happening here. Right. Yeah. So I mean, listening for voice inflection, listening for tones, asking questions, getting off track, but knowing how to get back on track. You don't have to memorize your script, at least with our agency, but you have to master your script. You have to know how to get in and out of it. And you have to know, like if you're already talking about this, but you haven't hit these, like one of our top producers, Madison, that works with us, he has on the side of his computer kind of his bullet points of script. And if he's talking about stuff down here in his script and he hasn't hit these things up here, then he knows he's got to go back up or he's going to hit roadblocks at the bottom, whether it's, social banking, all the bogus stuff that we deal with. But if
Yeah.
you're, but if you solidify the why, make sure you have it's not doesn't become a one leg telesale, which is very possible, right? Or that they have the banking information. You're not going to get pushed back on social and stuff like that. Um, and I think I hear a lot of people practice with their script. I'm like, oh yeah, I've said it a lot of time. I'm like, oh cool, let me hear the recording. Well, I haven't said it out loud. I'm like, dude, well, you're not going to say it in your head. I mean, to the other person. So, I don't care if you practice with your dog or your spouse or your mailman. Like, you gotta get this thing out into the universe and record it and turn your camera on and unmute yourself. I mean, there's so many of these Zooms, right, John, around the country that, people can hear you. And don't worry about it, dude. We all sucked at this in the beginning and we all still suck at it at a certain level now.
Agreed.
I mean, dude, some days I'm just like, man, I can't believe, the day I had, and not for nothing, I don't have to sell life insurance right now. I mean, it's not like a have to for me. I do it because I want to stay engaged in what's going on, and I want to know what's going on with the carriers and the leads and the e-apps and the certain products. Like, I don't think it's a good deal for me as an agency owner to be blind to all that stuff.
Sure.
I want to have relationship with the carrier reps. I want them to say, oh, it's Schmidt calling, I'm going to answer. Not be like, oh, I haven't heard from this guy in 6 months. He doesn't even send us it. Like, you ask, where's everyone screwing up? I think it's a little bit, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I mean, I fell asleep many, many nights on the couch, in January, February, March, leading up to this thing of listening to Frank and Jamie, a lot of Jamie, listening to her do her phone, right? And listening to your stuff on presenting to seniors and, remembering Mike say, hey, if you're not calling a lead, you're calling a recruit. Like, I mean, it was always on my seat, right? I mean, there was never a better time to call a recruit after you made a sale and never a better time in the world to call a recruit after you didn't make a sale.
It's true.
But sometimes, you need to resell yourself on this opportunity, right? So I don't know if you want to dig deeper on any of those things, but I mean, that's a lot of it, man. And this isn't all the time thing. I mean, think of like your favorite diner or pizza place or your coffee place. Like there's a reason why you always see that person there because he's probably the owner. He owns it, right?
Legit.
So I mean, like you got to be. I mean, depending on what you want out of this thing, right? I mean, I wanted to change our lives at a big, our family's lives at a big scale, right? So, I mean, this is like, I golf when asked, and I'm terrible at it, but I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't, any other of these things. I don't boat, I get seasick. I don't do big vacations, we'll go to Disney every 18 months or whatever, but like, this is what I do, so, so I think connecting yourself with the right group that has a system like you, John, or, like some of these other, top agency owners, and it's just like, this is what I do. This is all I do. People know I'm available. And if I don't answer, if I can't get the answer to the question, like I'll call Gavin if it's an annuity question, or if it's, question on this, then I'll call that person, so, and because I'm still engaged on a daily basis, hear people talk, what's your differentiator? I'm involved. I'm in it. I'm in the huddle. Yeah. I'm on the field. I'm not in, it's true. I'm not up on, I'm calling the plays and I'm running them and I'm engaged in them. So
my head would be spinning right now if I had to do that. I wouldn't know where to begin with a fucking application today. So I can feel the other side. Yeah. Like, ooh. And I remember when I first started that got weird at the beginning. I was like, ooh, this is weird. And now I'm like, dang, I feel like kind of like a dummy because there's a lot of stuff.
But as a head coach or an offensive coordinator or whatever, or, I mean, you got the base coaches, right? And you got bench coaches and you got the, whatever the slang is in baseball, but the GM, right? I mean, so, but where I'm at in the business right now, I mean, I'm hoping that our goal is to hit 20 billion this year, and again, a small piece of the big puzzle
Yeah.
Um,
It helps though.
but I think that's important for me right now. And
Yeah.
then, because if you get tangled up, you can like, hey, Schmidt, hey, Zach, hey, Easton, hey,
Mhm.
Dom. Like, I mean, there's different, different things. So
Dude, I remember in that story when you started, you said 18. Was that the end of 18 and beginning of
mhm.
19? Okay.
Very end of 18. Yep.
Okay, cool. So that month, January, I went back in the field that month, January of 19.
Hmm.
And we did around 10 million that year. And that's when Facebook leads were new. They were like kind of brand new to the world
Hmm.
at that
Hmm.
stage. And a lot of our agents were bitching that they couldn't convert. And I was like trying to coach people on stuff. And this one dude who you actually know, I tell the story all the time, but I've never said his name. So no one really knows who it is. But he would always go like, well, you don't know, you don't call them. Well, you don't know, you don't call them. I'm like, bro, they're people and they're leads, dude. Like, think about it. Anyway, he did it one too many times. So I called his manager who made the leads. I'm like, give me
Yep.
leads, bro. I want the same leads. I went in the
Yep.
field, issued like 30 grand in like 3 weeks, dude. I'll find
Hmm.
just and home by and at that stage, dude, home by dinner.
Hmm.
I was just stacking them from like 8 to 4, 8 to 5 every day. And but that did a lot for the team. You know what I mean? Being in there with them and kind of doing what you're doing now. Like, dude, we blew up
Yeah.
that year because of that.
Well, when you qualify, yeah, as an agency owner, you're qualifying for cruises and you're qualifying for Cancun and you're wearing a red jacket and you're wearing a green jacket, and you're getting, an award for, one of the widest agencies in the company. It's like, okay, well, you
Yeah,
know, dude, you just got, I mean, and I said this a long, long time. I mean, they got t-shirt, and, just work. I mean,
it's true.
it's just work, man. And but it's not your typical 9 to 5, 8 to 4 deal. It's because the typical person that works 8 to 4, 9 to 5, they're probably putting in, total of 2, 3 hours, maybe. If you actually, because you talk about, hey, work is dialing out, recruiting, or presenting and closing. That's all you
Yeah.
get credit for, right?
Yeah.
So, like when I talk to people now and I'm recruiting, and I'm like, well, how many hours a week are you thinking about doing this? It doesn't matter what the answer is because, I know where I'm going to take it. And they'll
Sure.
say, 30, 40 hours. I'm like, all right. So if you say 30, 40, it's probably 30. And I said, so that's, 180 minutes, whatever the math, 1800 minutes, whatever the real math is on
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
can't do it in my head. But I'm like, dude, you get 168 hours in a week. So no disrespect, but what are you doing with the other 130 hours a week that you can't do this? And I'm okay with it. I just didn't know if there's like something else big going on in your life. And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about the 30 hours. That doesn't count podcasts, you logging in to check, policies or calling the carrier, being on hold. Like all you get credit for it. And again, I pulled this right from you. I mean, it's all a rip off and duplicate deal, but I'm like, you get credit for that and that's it, you know
Yeah.
and most people can't do it. I'm really, and again, I take so much stuff from you, John, but and I'll tell people, I've said honestly, this phone call is to try to get you to quit before you start. And
Yeah.
and they're like, I can't believe
Recruiting
you talk.
101 right there.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't believe you talk to people this way. I said, you don't know how many conversations I have, and the conversations that when I don't talk about this, they all quit. So I'd rather
Sure.
you just save yourself your time and your money,
Yeah.
and my resources, to do that.
Yeah.
So um,
What are you looking for when you are obviously looking for someone to quit? How do you know when to stay on the phone with them, when to keep someone, when to give someone a shot? Like, what are your,
well, when I'm 53, when they're younger than me, it's always a good sign. They don't have a lot of bad habits. Um, I like to, hear like I ask questions like, well, what'd you do in high school? Did you play any sports in high school? I mean, they don't have to be like this,
sure.
person that barely didn't make it to the pros, or maybe they were in the league for a minute and then, they played in Europe, in the NFL Europe for a little bit. But I'm like, but what did you play in college or high school? What sport did you play? Because then I can do analogies right away.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I was sixth, seventh man off the bench in basketball. My job was to go in and foul out. That was pretty much my job in high school basketball. Just bang the people up. I said, and we'll talk about free throws. I'm like, so if you had to make 10, would you want 10 shots or 100? If you had to make 10,
Yeah.
well, I would want 100. I'm like, of course, we'll talk about that with leads, and stuff like that. But what was the question again, John? Because I got myself off track.
Shit. I just like hearing where you're going with it. For me, it's like
Oh,
The
what I
point
like
is,
to talk, what I like to ask people about, right? Yeah. So I want to like, how's your credit? It's not that good. Okay. Is it important for you to get that credit better? Well, yes. Okay. Well, what are you doing about it? I'm not a big book reader. Obviously, I read your book. I got your book right here, Get Better Later. Um, but, what's the last book you read? And again, I'm not a big book reader. Who do
yeah,
you follow online? You know, what do you do with your idle time? Because if they only want to do this 40 hours a week and they don't have another job, and I give people credit for church, I give people credit for working
sure.
out, I give people credit for date nights. I mean, I give people, time credit for a lot of stuff that they're probably not even really doing. But those are the types of things that I like to ask. And I want to kind of see if we're the same blood type, so to speak.
Yeah.
And because when I tell them, like, dude, this is all I do, and I don't know if we're going to be a good fit because it sounds like you have other things going on and other interests. And I get it, but like when I started this thing, my kids were already almost teenagers, like if,
Yeah.
I'm talking to you and your kids are 1, 3, 5 years old, like, dude, now's the time,
Sure.
now's the time. And, I'm like, do you want to have to sell life insurance for the rest of your life? Or do you want other opportunities where you don't have to sell life insurance? And if they're like totally against it, I'm like, okay, and I give them 3 videos to watch. I go like I had a recruiting call this morning, and I'm like, I just woke up. I'm like, well, she did live in Arizona, so I gave her a little bit of grace. But I'm like, well, good morning. So I don't even really have much of a conversation. I say, okay, here's 3 videos to watch. Once you're done watching them, if it feels like it's a good fit, then hit me back and we can discuss next steps. And then I'll start kind of interrogating on all those questions I kind
Yeah.
of just asked about. But if they can't find, I remember Eric said this in the beginning. I'm like, dude, like those things are in place to see if you can do them or not. Like logging into, HCMS or doing your own contracting and SureLC or whatever it used to be or whatever. Like if you can't do those things how are you going to sell a policy? How are
Do
you going to
this.
overcome
Yeah.
this? Like there's no way. So
Sure.
it's almost like built in like levels. Like I know you do a lot of those outdoor events. Like, dude, if you can't get over that first wall, how are you
Yeah.
going to get over the last wall?
Sure.
It's just not going to work, Um, so a lot of that stuff, and I'm just like, and I tell people, I'm like, hey, I got out of the car business not to micromanage people. So if you need to be micromanaged, I'm your wrong person. This is probably the wrong deal for you. But again, I don't want to repeat everything that you talk about, but I talk about, when you call 50 people and they all tell you to kick rocks,
Yeah.
and they're like, is that going to happen? I'm like, no, it's 100% going to happen.
It's
There's,
coming, bro.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's no way it's not going to happen. When you, but if you work every day, it's hard to have a bad month. You're gonna have a bad
Sure.
day. You're gonna have a bad week. It's unavoidable. What I mean? The Deion Sanders and the Michael Jordans of the world. I mean, they have bad days internally, but they don't let it come out because they know
Yeah.
they're just gonna, go back to work. And so yeah, I mean that's just kind of my thought on a lot of that stuff. So
Yeah.
Get effing paid.
Get effing paid.
Get effing paid.
Get effing paid.
What up, guys? If you guys are looking to get to a new level in your career, you may have seen that we've been running some workshops in my office in Atlanta. I have them every quarter now. The last one sold out fully. It was a massive success. A couple different levels. You can attend just a general ticket, get you in the door, listen to 2 days of training, interactive, workshop style. We really dive into what you got going on and how to get to new levels. If you're looking to be in a new crowd, higher level up, I have a private mastermind. Last one was at my house. It was insane. All the value that everybody added to each other, and we had a good time. And I heard it was way underpriced relative to what people got out of it. You can check out some of the testimonials here, I'm sure. But if you'd like to attend, click the link below. I do them every quarter. The date will be around here somewhere. Look forward to seeing you there.
If you are in the insurance industry and you're looking to scale and grow your business, I highly encourage you to check John Wetmore out.
Probably honestly made the cost of the event back in like the first 2 hours of being here.
If you want to win and you want to grow, I would get around John as much as you can.
John Wetmore is a beast.
So much value in everything that I've learned here.
Growing, about building, delegating. He's talking about systems and automating right now.
It is worth the price of admission. Make sure you get to the next one.
It's funny, you're similar in that, like, you don't let people sell you on the bullshit they've sold themselves on as excuses as to why they can't succeed to the level they say they want. you know,
Yeah.
you just don't take their, like, they try to pitch you on their, why they want your validation a lot of times. And you're like, really, bro? Like,
Well,
stop.
because even in the car business, like someone gets sold on every interaction. I mean,
True.
someone's getting closed. Either they're closed on you on why they got to go home and look at their budget and talk to their butcher about buying a new, like, dude, that's got nothing to do with anything. You know, they came to the lot to buy a car, you know, and if you're at the presentation stage, like you're in the numbers, you know, I used to sit down with people, they, you know, the salesperson would be like, okay, hey, I need a TO. I'm going to turn it over to the manager. Right. So they would come back and they would bring me in. I would sit down, and this was kind of towards the end where I kind of just didn't really give two shits. But I'd be like, hey, John, you know, hey, Stephanie, so you guys like the car, you know, built to good care of you. It's the right color, stuff like that. Perfect. So I'm getting about 3 out of 10 right now. So you're either part of the 3 or you're part of the 7. Either way, I don't really care. I care because I care about you and your family, but you're either part of the 3 or part of the 7. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, when I come out and I sit down with folks like you, 3 end up saying yes and they drive home for the car, and 7 don't. They go home without the car. I mean, but I have to see 10 to get the 3 and the 7. Yep. So if you're part of the 3, fantastic. If you're part of the 7, fantastic. You know, but if we're a couple $100 away, we can probably do something. If we're a couple $1,000 away, I'm sorry, we're probably just not going to get together. Yep. And they would just be like, come back in their chair and be like, man, no one's ever like talked to this way. And they go from dealer to dealer to dealer.
Yeah.
So I used a lot of the same stuff here. Like, and, you know, looking at your Easter egg, you know, message this morning, I'm just like, if you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. Yeah. You know, I'm good either way. There's 170 million adults in this country, you know, and they're all going to die. 165,000 of them in the world died today. I mean, we're all going to die. You know, so you asked for the information, you answered the phone, you gave up a lot of non-public information to me as a stranger so I could call you. You know, now, you know, if you're in, great. If you're out, great. You know, I'm good either way. You know, I just, you know, but I'm dialing 3 numbers at a time. I got to get to the next call. So
it's funny. It's certainly a lot easier to do when you have enough reps on your side. You know, I remember early, because I didn't come into it killing it like you did, obviously, and I came in significantly. I think I was making, I don't know, 1/8 of what you were making. And, you know, I went through that stage, dude, where I'd see 5 people a week, and I couldn't talk like that. You know what I mean? It was like,
well, yeah, because
I had to
you
kind
got
of beg
commission
for that one. Yeah,
you got commission breath for sure. And that's why I'm saying, like, you know, for people that are brand new on this thing, like whatever, you know, organization you're working with, ask for help. I mean, I had this thing, no bullshit. These are all people that I've talked to that I just didn't get to the finish line on. So when people come in, they're like, I'm just like here at the office. I'm like,
there's plenty of sales
start
in that too.
Huh?
There'll be plenty of sales in it too.
Oh, dude, there's tens of thousands of dollars in here. Wow. You know, I don't even there's tons. I might start calling these today, but they
go live on that.
But I would ask for help. Just ask for help. You know, what do you have? What leads do you have that I can dial? You know, and I would really work on it. I mean, obviously there's inexpensive leads, you know, in our systems, right? You know, sure. But you know, I mean, if someone's brand new and they're like, you know, they're kind of really, really, really trying to figure this thing out, you know, and their back's really, I mean, I put my back against the wall, John, because I couldn't be in the car business anymore. I mean, in 2000 and I don't know what year it was now. But I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation and cardiomyopathy, right? So I'm on flecainide, metoprolol, ramipril, and Xarelto now. I'm on 4 heart medications because I'm trying to not go into AFib. And I recently lost like 50 pounds, so that's helping. And I'm making, a lot of good decisions. But like I needed to get out of that car business. It was just a way too stressful an environment. Plus Carrie doing everything with the kids and the kids saying, where are you? And blah, blah, blah. Like, and I wanted to be able to be involved, with that stuff, and be able to volunteer on my daughter's basketball team and maybe not be the head coach, but be involved, and so I had to get out of that business. So financially I could have, grinded it out for another 20 years. I mean, college is expensive. It's 30, 40, 50 G's a year, depending on where you go, and, do you have to go to college? No, but I think you learn a lot in class in college and learned out of class in college, how to grow up, at least for my son, who's a sophomore at New Hampshire. I said, dude, just learn something every day. I said, you don't have to be perfect. I said, don't get in more trouble than I can get you out of. That's one of my first things I tell them.
Good one.
And I say, just learn something. I said, if you learn something with your buddies, being a good teammate, he's on the lacrosse team there, or with your friends, or, make good choices. I know you're going to make some bad choices, but just don't make them so bad that it changes your life, so.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I think, asking for help, and not in swallowing your ego and swallowing your pride, say, man, I need some help. Can you listen to my script? Can you role play with me? Do you have some junk leads that I can just get hung up on, and doing more, making that extra dial. And now, I'm in Connecticut, right? So I work all time zones, right? So I take advantage of time zones. Some people like I was talking to a guy the other day who lives in Rhode Island. Well, I'm going to get Connecticut and Massachusetts. I'm like, why? I said, Connecticut's 150, Massachusetts is $225 to get the non-resident. The people are jerks in Connecticut and Massachusetts. They're hard to close. They're all very cynical and they think everyone's getting ripped off. I said, and you have to start your day at 8 a.m. Why don't you get some? One of my campaigns is only mountain time, only mountain time, because I can start at 10 and I can end at 10. Rather 8 and 8. And you can get and you're talking to nicer people typically. Now, if you're West Coast, right, and you're an early person, or you don't want to have to work all the way into the night, then get some leads. I wouldn't do Northeast. I would do Georgia. Nice people in Georgia, like
Carolinas, Tennessee, nice
Carolinas,
people.
Alabama, Tennessee, South and North Carolina. Louisiana. That's a central time.
Where's the asshole line? It's right up.
It's actually in the logo of my agency. If you can, and again, this is going a little bit off topic, but I've been working some New York IUL opportunities. So the only, with NLG, right, we can sell, and again, this is, real specific, but, I just popped in my head, but, where's the fish where no one's fishing?
Sure.
Right. So you can get New York leads at a very discounted price, but it's going to have to be a smaller niche, right? They're going to have to be the right health, the right age, the right mindset. But
you can find honey holes now, though.
But I've been doing a lot of that. But yeah, people in South Dakota, they're sweethearts, So again, I don't want to get too far off topic.
Dude, I used to find that, bro, back in the day. Certainly we'd buy local field. You can only run what you can run, whatever radius you want to drive to. But dude, to find that honey hole of phenomenal people outside of my backyard, basically, I used to have to fly to Utah to sell. In today's world, it's so easy to find those. I could just sat in my underwear and called Utah if it were a thing back then. It's 10 years ago. What's the biggest, since you've done both at a high level, field sales and telesales, what do you think? Dude, I hear so often, some people are just I think way overcomplicated. But to you, having come from field to telesales, what do you see as the biggest difference? And maybe for those that are struggling with it.
Yeah. So if you've never done in-home, then this really probably not going to make much sense. But when I was in home, I'm 6'4" and change, right now I'm 260 pounds, bald. When I walk up to a house, it's I'm in charge. There's no confusion, right? I'll take my shoes off. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to talk about the neighbors, the yard, the bumper sticker on the back of the car that your son was in the honor roll. Those are all things, but they're not going to push me out of the house. They're getting insurance when I'm there. I'm going in and I'm grabbing the remote. I'm turning the TV off, and I'm all right, no, we're not going to sit there. We're going to sit there. And, but I think in telesales, you can't be whispering, you need to enunciate. You don't have to give unnecessary information. Even though my last name isn't difficult, I don't ever say this is Eric Schmidt, because people are never going to remember my last name. So those first few seconds in the script, and I always have my script. I still read off a script. Yes, I've been doing this for a minute, but I have my script here. And I think, with the telesales, you definitely can't get emotional because I mean, people can get you fired up. Like I was talking, so we were driving to New Hampshire Saturday, and I had an inbound call, and I can just tell it's going to be insurance. And the guy's like, "You're nothing special," and I'm like, "You're right. I am not special." Well, what makes your offer unique? I go, nothing. I said, I work with 26 carriers, and I said, you'll get the same quote from me than you will from everyone else. But then he's, now again, there isn't a happy ending to the story, but he's like, wow. And I'm like, sir, I said, did you call me to complain or to yell at me, or are you interested in information about protecting your loved ones when you die? Not if you die, but when you die. And again, Carrie's sitting, she's like, just hang up on him. He's being rude. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, it's time to go. So I, hung up, blocked them, and then I'm in. I block, a lot of people on my phone. I block a lot of people on my phone.
Yeah.
I block some people, and then some people I put on emergency bypass. So when they do call, regardless of my mode, it still rings through, so I can get the call. But I think really just having that drive, and it doesn't make a difference. Like I hear some people, well, I need $300 a day or 10 presentations. Like, dude, you need to dial until your family's needs are met. It doesn't make a difference. And I know you've done all the math, and I love your calculations. They're like, well, every dial is if I gave you $2 for every dial you made, would you make as many until, go to the bottom of your phone? How many did you make? But I mean, you got to get presentations, and presentations is, hey, gold, silver, bronze, this package, what's, but getting those presentations and getting to the finish line. And if you don't, then again, if you're on the East Coast, you just got to keep working west, until you get your numbers. And if that's Alaska, if that's Hawaii, I mean, you just got to keep working west until you get it. And if you don't have that luxury and you're in a Pacific time zone or a mountain time zone, then you got to get your butt up early, until it gets going. But once you get going, and you find your voice, right? Because I think you do need to find your voice when it comes to these phone calls. And I don't know if you ask me to explain that, I don't know if I can explain that, but like you find your confidence in it.
Yeah.
And it's tough to do, especially when like, well, dude, like my car payment was due 3 weeks ago. Like I'm not even parking near my house anymore, and I took my plates off, and I'm doing some weird shit because I don't want, I'm avoiding some phone calls and my landlord. And again, I get it, but this is the lowest barrier of entry opportunity that's out there.
True.
There's a Subway next to me. I mean, that's 50 G's to open up, and the guy never leaves. He's key to key, and I mean, he ain't making real money over there. And, I was at the gym this morning, and, I'm talking to the trainer. I'm like, is this all you do? Like, what else do you do? And, I was talking to a corrections officer. He's like, well, I work, third shifts, and I work out at this time. I'm like, well, dude, like, you can stop, because he works 40 hours as a corrections officer plus 20 hours overtime a week. I'm like, dude, you can replace your overtime and do this from home and be with your dog or your girlfriend or whatever. And you don't have to do all that overtime. You can do this, So I think, just with the telesales, it's just, you gotta have a lot. You gotta have a lot, and I used to use this analogy a lot. Do you ever watch that gold show on that USA Network or A&E? Like if they're in Alaska mining for gold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they would put all that pay dirt, right? So they drill down to find out where the gold is. And they they have like hundreds of thousands of dirt, right? And they put it in the front, and then it goes through this whole entire cycle, shaking out the rocks and the water going on top. Sure. And at the very end are these tiny, tiny specks, right? So dude, you got to have a lot of dirt to put in a thing to get the gold out at the end. But if you stop halfway, but it takes time. It definitely takes time.
Sometimes they fill that machine up and ain't no gold in it.
There's it. Then they're like really confused.
Or they get to the spot that's frozen solid they can't get to. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff in every business. That's the funny thing. That people choose to miss.
And I wouldn't change lanes too often. I wouldn't change lanes too often. A lot of times, like if you're on a like your traffic down there in the greater metro area, or the like I remember last time I was down there, in Atlanta. I'm like, dude, is like the president in town, or like are the Olympics happening? They're like, no, it's like 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. They're like, no, this is every day. I'm like, I could never move here. This is ridiculous. But you see people like, oh, I'm going to move to this lane because it looks like it's, dude, stay in your lane, give it 90 days.
Yeah.
And I'm bad at that. I'm like, ooh, IUL, ooh, veteran, ooh, regular final expense. Oh, I'm going to do mortgage protection. Like, dude, just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Take advice from people that are doing the good things, but don't be jumping in and out of lanes too often. Oh, I'm going to use Kixie. I'm going to use Ready Mode. I'm going to use Phone Burner. I'm going to use Wave Dialer. Like, dude, chill, relax. And then you got all these different numbers and all these different CRMs, and you're bouncing in between 7 of them. Like, take a breath. Take a breath. You're not going to get a 6-pack in a week, dude. You're going to have to go to the gym more than 5 days in a row to get a 6-pack. I don't care where you're starting from.
I agree with that, dude. I work my ass off and I still don't have one. I'm like, shit, this is hard to get, bro. I'm close, but man, I love it, dude. Well, I appreciate your time, bro. Thanks for getting on, and keep killing it. Keep helping people, doing good things. And if I can ever help with anything, certainly let me know.
Dude, you do help, and I appreciate everything that you do, that that you do for me, and all the things that you do that you don't do for me. So I think you're a huge asset and value, and I lean on you a lot, even when you're not there to lean on. So I appreciate you more than you know, man. More than you know.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you. Thanks for your time today, dude. Go kill it.
Get shit done, boys. Let's go.
Do more. Later.